I want to thank Casey and Cassie for putting this together. Casey, Casey works in my office. I want to thank the Up to Us Caravan. Is that what it's called? Thank you for what you're doing, going to the DNC. Your efforts to make sure that you push the system or push the Democrats, or really just trying to build a movement that's not necessarily political, but pushes politics to create the world that we want. And I saw that you're talking about us envisioning it and having a narrative about the world we want to see. And it is up to us to make that world. Because somebody's making the world, right? Let's not pretend like that's not happening. Somebody's making it. So if you're not making it, somebody's making it for you. And it probably is not going to be the world you want unless you hang out with those people. Right? All right, so since I'm not hanging out with the people that get together in Davos and other places and make the decisions about the super rich 1%, I have to get together with people like you who are more like me and create that world. So I'll say a few more things that we're going to get to the panel. There's a lot going on in our country and really around the world right now. You know, we are at war, even though sometimes it doesn't feel like it because we don't see body bags coming home. But there's people dying, not so many of U.S. citizens, but other people. There's a lot of other people dying that we are responsible for their deaths. Also, there's a lot of unrest, and you all are part of the unrest, which is good stuff. So it kind of reminds me, even though I'm only 52, so in the 1960s I was a little kid, but I do read, right? And it kind of reminds me of what was going on then. Not very different. But this time, we're going to make it different. And that's part of what you all are doing. We have to push it further. We have to envision together. There were a lot of movements in that time. There are a lot of movements right now. And they built a foundation that we're standing on, right? But they failed in coming together and really changing what was happening. And that's where we're not going to fail. So I thank you for what you're doing, because that's what you're trying to do. So one thing, to create the narrative that you guys are talking about, we have to learn about each other and listen to each other. Because you can't create a common narrative if you're only creating your part of the narrative. So that's one of the things that we're doing today with this panel. Is we're having people who are in different movements or movements of different sorts talking about why they're doing what they're doing and what they're doing. And I have a set of questions for them. So I'm going to let each one of the panelists introduce themselves when I hand the microphone down. And I'm going to start off with our first question. Now, I talked about the 60s, and obviously one of the people's names that came out of the 60s was Dr. Martin Luther King. He's a big hero of mine, and I realize I stand on his shoulders with many other people on their shoulders. One of the things he talked about was the triple evils of poverty, racism, and militarism. Poverty could be radical capitalism, or poverty could be greed. Racism is all forms of bigotry and bias. And militarism, I mean, that pretty much stands for itself in terms of war, right? The only thing I would add to it is patriarchy. I don't think we can forget that. These are all forms of violence that exist in a vicious cycle. They are interrelated, all-inclusive, and stand as barriers to our living in the beloved community. We are all impacted by these evils, but called into this work through different paths. So the question to the panel is, what got you into this type of work or organizing? And introduce yourselves fairly quickly and answer the question. Thank you.
My name is Timothy Rakenberg. I'm with the Office Project. And I'd say we fight in our community against our opiate epidemic and bringing art and music together to make a positive change within our community. I'd say I got into the work mostly because I was inspired a lot by my brother who passed away. He really believed that people could come together for art and music and different creative ways instead of hurtful ways, so we can come together and like make actual change within our community. So I think what we do and what I do through running this project is try and make a community of artists and musicians and people who are doing positive things, but don't stop at the positive things. Work towards bettering our community so that everybody else can do positive things as well.
Hi, my name is Steve Holsworth. I'm a local activist here in St. Louis. I'm going to date myself a little bit by saying that I got into this work doing anti-apartheid work in the 80s. And one of the things that really relates to this quote to me is when I was doing that work, I tried to organize a number of actions, and I did it with the intention of that this would be a interracial kind of movement that I was trying to get going. And what happened was, even though I was very well-intentioned, I was young, and I created these actions, and mostly white people showed up. And I realized that while I was trying to fight apartheid somewhere else, I was recreating apartheid in my own world by not finding ways to get outside of the racist system that I was living in. And from that moment, I began to be very aware of counting how many people showed up at an action. And I didn't care anymore what the intentions were. Intentions mean nothing to me. If the results recreate racism by having an underrepresentation of people of color, then the action is racist. Because the system is racist. So even if you have great intentions, and you're trying to create something great, unless you're actively resisting the racism of our culture, you will recreate racism in what you do. And counting is important. Counting how many white people, how many people who show up as people of color to something you have organized tells you something about the way you organized it, whether you intended to do that or not. And so unless you're actively working against it, the results give the truth. And when I had that realization, I knew that the work I had to do from that point forward was intersectional, and where I was actively working against oppressions of all kinds as I tried to fight one oppression. You can't undo patriarchy with language that is racist. You can't undo imperialism with actions that are misogynist. You can't just fight one of these oppressions. You must fight them all in what you do. And even if your intentions are good, unless you're actively doing that, you will be recreating those oppressions in everything you do.
Hi, my name is Jamila Jackson, and I'm an activist. What got me motivated to do this type of work was prior to August, I was reading the Black Panthers book list, and it was a book list that they required Black Panthers to read, and some of those books was hard hitting and heavy. And he was like, dang, like my dad always told me when I was younger, like, racism is still alive. And I was like, man, Dad, why would you say that? That's racist. And then August came around, and I was like, oh, shit. Like, it is, like, this is something that's still going on, and it's our duty to fight for it. And we can't expect stuff to be given to us. My father always told me, you want something, you gotta go get it. So I'm out here, and I'm getting it.
Good evening. My name is Kayla Reed. I am currently a community organizer with a grassroots organization called the Organization for Black Struggle, which has been doing racial justice work in St. Louis since 1980. I'm from St. Louis. I was born here on August 9th. I lived in the apartment complex right across the street. I graduated from Riverview Gardens High School, and it's important to know that when you come to St. Louis, people ask that question, what high school did you graduate from? It tells them a lot about what they need to know about you. So Riverview Gardens is the same high school that most of the children who live in Campbell Green apartments would go to that district. How did I get into this work? His name is Michael Brown. And on August 9th, I was a pharmacy technician, and I worked at a furniture store part-time, and I was at that furniture store on August 9th when I saw the picture of a young black man, a young black boy laying in the middle of the street. And it was about as warm as it is today, that day. And that day brought me out the house, and people who were angry and tired and fed up because St. Louis has a very long history of racism stayed out, and that's what kept me here, wanting to be with those people, learn from those people, love those people. And so I started organizing direct actions, things like Occupy SLU. I ended up getting some crazy ancestor upstairs said, hey, give her a job as an organizer and see what that looks like. And in December of 2014, I started work at OBS. I've done a lot of work around policy. I've done a lot of work around mobilizing people. I'm really tired right now because I just came from an action downtown. I think some of you might have been there. So I appreciate you. And most currently, I am one of the organizing leads, I'd say, of an entity called St. Louis Action Council, which is very important to me because I believe that people need a space to enter into the movement, to learn and to grow and to develop. And a lot of people think that there's a special recipe that you're born with to be a leader, and I think the most important ingredient in that recipe is the desire to love your people and want to do right by your people. And I'm grateful that I have that gift, and I am trying to spread that, whatever I know, to everyone else around me. What I will also say is that Ferguson is a unique place in the ways in which policy were written to create it. Ferguson, for 2 years, has been pushing back against everything that we fought to change about it. Ferguson believes that who they are and what they have been is what they should continue to be. And I want people to know that Ferguson is not a unique place in this region for those beliefs. That everywhere you turn, every left you make, every right you make, you are dealing with a political system that is very complicit in the status quo. And complicit in the status quo means that black people are inferior to them. We are banks, we are capital, we are laborers, we are not human, we are subhuman to these people. And I learned that when they called the National Guard to occupy West Florissant for simply black people standing in the middle of the street. And so this movement that has been born, called the Movement for Black Lives, is a lot to do with racism. But I think that the movement that I want to see actually starts within each of us. That we have to deconstruct what society has taught us. We have to deconstruct racism and stereotypes and prejudices. And we have to actually believe that love is why we do this work, right? It's not a byproduct, it's not a sideline, it is an actual motivation for this, that people, Tamir Rice should have been able to make it home, Sandra Bland should have been able to make it to work, Alton Sterling should have been able to sell CDs, and that Philando Castile should have been able, because of the Constitution, the way that these Republicans in Cleveland are fighting for that Second Amendment, he should have been able to have his gun in his car because it was registered and not be shot 5 times in front of his 4-year-old daughter. So Ferguson is unique, and it is why I entered into this work. But every day a black person is killed by the police, and that is the reason why I'm staying in this work. And I hope that you will join that.
Thank you. As you can see, this is an awesome panel. People have some really deep things to say, and people have real personal reasons, as I'm sure all of you, as to why you're doing what you do. And one thing I just wanted to lift up is what Kayla said about change and how things are so entrenched and people don't want to change. So I also want to say to you that you got to think about what ways, I know I do this every day, what ways don't that I don't want to change, because I have resistance to change too, and I respect all of you do too. So don't think you don't. Be looking at yourself as well as the system that we perpetuated. And the last thing I wanted to say, Canfield Green Apartments is where Michael Brown, you all might not know this, is where Michael Brown was killed. That's the complex that Kayla was talking about. So, the next question. We know that this work isn't easy, and there are daily challenges. What is the most inspiring part of your current work, and how do you find hope and joy to keep going? And why don't we start at the other end this time?
I'll be shorter, I promise. What is the most inspiring part of your work? Black people. Because to be a Black person in America and decide to come outside of your house and fight against the system that you know has for a very long time, or since its creation, never been for you, is probably the greatest example of resilience I've ever seen in my life. That people are deciding to go against racism. This country was founded on that. That people are fighting against capitalism. This country was founded on that, right? And so I think what inspires me is every time I see a new status on social media that says, oh my God, I can't believe this happened. What can I do? Or every time we have a meeting and I say, is anyone here for the first time, and someone's hands lift up. You know that a movement is right when it's growing. If it becomes stagnant, it's no longer doing the right thing. And this movement for 2 years has been steadily growing. And I am hopeful that people, because I think that the work of this movement is person to person, right? It's a connection between two people where I see you and you see me, and we decide that we matter enough to fight for each other. I am a self-identified Christian. I look at it a little differently, but I think that what I was taught, because my dad's a preacher, he's a Baptist preacher, he always used to say that the greatest act of love is that a man would lay down his life for a friend. I see that every single day in this movement, that people put their bodies on the line for people they never knew, and they are willing to give up everything that they have for people that they'll never meet. And I owe everything that I have to people in Ferguson who I may never see again, but they were ready and willing to die for me, to die for Mike, to sacrifice their jobs, their houses, all of these things. And I think that is what keeps me alive, because this work will kill you. So I'm very grateful to people.
For me, over time, what I've done with the movement has changed. At first, I was following behind Kayla in the streets, marching, protesting, interrupting everything. But now, for me, it's become more political. Now that the presidential race is going on, it's like I need to go out there and just interrupt Donald Trump. I would follow him around for all of us. For me, what inspired me is my peers. When I first came out here, everybody was like, why would you protest? Why would you do that? Why would you die for this? And I was like, yeah, I have little brothers. Of course I'm gonna die for this, because if I don't, then who's gonna fight for my little brothers if I won't? So what's inspiring me are my peers, everybody around me. We're out there in the streets and people are looking at us like yuck faces. It's like, you're bothered, we're bothering you, so it's obvious that we're doing something and you hate it. What keeps me moving are the children, honestly. I've changed, since I've been in college, I've changed my line of studies, changed my line of work so I can work with the community. Started as a journalist, now I'm a sociology major. And my plan is to work with children and to get them off the streets, to keep them out the system so we don't have to worry about them. I work at a local store, and I'm not going to name the company because they're kind of prejudiced, but I work at a local store, and what gets me is every single time a little Black kid walks in, they stare at them. And that drives me insane. I'm not gonna watch these kids walk around this store. That is not my job. My job is to ring these people out and send them on their way. We're not gonna profile every child that comes in the store. And the one thing that made, at first I was getting a little tired. I was like, I can't keep doing this. I was like, what am I doing it for? But the other day I was at work and this kid was driving his father's Bentley. I saw the cops follow him into the parking lot, pull this kid out of his car, handcuffed him, searched him, threw him on the ground, checked the gas compartment for drugs. Gas compartment. Like, and that right there was my inspiration. I was like, you cannot keep doing this to these children. This child was driving his father's car to put gas in, and you will not throw this kid on the floor just because it's a black kid driving in a vehicle.
I think the most inspiring part of my work right now is when I can see someone in an oppressor group realize it and change. So when I can see another white person realize that just like me and just like every other white person who grew up in America, we're racist. And we can work against racism, and we can try to liberate our internal racist dialogues that we've been taught our whole life, but we won't have 100% concentration on that 24 hours a day, and so we'll slip, and we'll do racist things because we're racist, because we're white and we grew up in America. And when someone gets that, it's really inspiring to me. When a man gets that, things he does are feeding the patriarchy, even if he doesn't want to, even if he doesn't realize it's happening. If the misogyny that's taught in our culture and that's woven into our language becomes visible to a man and he stops doing it, that really inspires me. If the privilege of national origin and having been born inside these borders and not have to worry about immigration or place or home, when someone who's a native born citizen realizes that inspires me. When someone who was born with a physical body that matches their internal sense of their gender realizes that not everybody has that experience, and that we need to be doing better all the time at disconnecting all of the anti-transgender messages that are out there in our culture. That inspires me. So whenever someone, from wherever they're standing, can see the places where our culture privileges them and gives them more power for no good reason, or a louder voice for no good reason, that really inspires me. And acknowledging it is inspiring. What gives me joy is when someone acts on it. What gives me joy is when the man just shuts up, which I'm going to do now.
As far as my contribution to, I guess this goes, opiates are usually a pretty heavy topic for people. Working in, day out, trying to stop this epidemic within our community, it gets really heavy at times. And there's people on our crew who I've had to sit down with, I know, somebody just gave you a 3-hour talk about how their friend just died and you can't take it, but we gotta do something, we gotta keep going, we can't just stop. And I think the thing that really gets me, that keeps me going when I get down like that is, we have a pretty colorful slogan. There are children here, so I wouldn't like to repeat it maybe over the megaphone, but I wear this shirt, Wampa shirt, out all the time. if I go to a bar, any given night of the week, at least 5 people will walk up to me and say, thank you for wearing that shirt. I mean, half the time they don't know, like, even what we're doing or what we're about. It's just them coming up to me and saying, thank you, like, that is an issue, realizing that it's an issue and getting it public to people. That every time I get that inclination that more people are out there, kind of like what you were saying, when someone realizes that there's an issue, when someone realizes that there's some other way we could be doing it besides the bogged down, tedious way that we are, that we can pass new laws that mean different things to help these people instead of treating them like scum of the earth addicts. I think that that's really when it makes it worth me doing. I mean, because it gets hard. It always gets hard trying to make a community better that doesn't seem like it wants to be. But when I see the people we support, you know, the news with Nixon or with Mayor Slay passing, you know, the 9/11 Good Samaritan law that we just got passed so that addicts can call for help if they have a friend overdosing instead of leaving them. I mean, that makes, even if I play just a tiny little part in that, even if I play just a tiny little part in saving someone's life, that's what makes me get up and do it every day.
I'm not supposed to answer the questions, but I'm gonna answer this one. So it's real quick. I'm inspired by 2 things. One is that Black people or people of the African diaspora could go from being slaves to me sitting here with you talking right now, being enslaved people and being here. That's a long word. If you ever get to read some slave narratives, it can really give you an insight into what the people went through. And the other one is children, because I know we don't have to be like we are, because I look at little kids and see their innocence, and I know they're turned into what we become. So that means that we can be something different. It's just a matter of doing exactly what we all are trying to do, is creating that world for us to be different in, right? So that gives me a lot of hope. More than hope. I know it can be done, and it will be done. So, 3rd question, and you actually kind of foreshadowed it, Kayla, which is good. Many of us are familiar with the MLK quote, darkness cannot drive out darkness, only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate, only love can do that. What role does love play in our movements?
I think that there's this terrible idea in our culture today that we can just hate things away. And what we're doing right here is the complete opposite of that, which I don't see why everyone doesn't think that's a good idea. Like, why aren't we all coming together saying, hey, if we all love each other and decide what we want to happen, that can be what happens. It doesn't have to be some... I'm sorry, I was watching Trump on TV last night, and I'm still calling. To me, our movements can only move forward if we come together and love each other. With what we're doing, that was a big part within Wampus when we started out the whole thing. It was like, we don't like this thing of opiates, but there's other things we don't like within our community. I mean, that people don't have clean drinking water, for instance. I mean, so much water over here came out to our event, stayed the entire time. We weren't a sleeping festival, they slept there. They stayed there the entire weekend, raising money for clean drinking water in different countries. So they go out and they do stuff like that, and we do stuff like that, and we can all collaborate and come together and say, how can we love each other? How can we find more love in the things that we're doing? We can push away these evil, dark things that are, I mean, from segregation, racism, to splitting up our city, not having clean water, not eating right, not having a healthy state of mind. That all ties back into why people are using opiates in the first place. People aren't healthy, people aren't loving enough. The answer to a drug issue is not putting people in prison. It's loving them enough to say, you are a person. loving them enough to say, you deserve life, you deserve to be here. It's putting Narcan in ambulances so when we show up we can revive them, throwing them in helping them find rehab. I mean, rehab is expensive. How are they supposed to pay for rehab? You think like the bottom of the barrel, like, and that's not everyone who's addicted to these by any means, but your stereotype of a drug addict, where are they getting the money? They spent all their money on drugs, then they realized they had a problem. It's seldom the other way. How are they supposed to afford help? We have to come together in love so that we can help lift up the whole society as a whole.
I want to expand just on what you said because I think that's it. That love is telling people the truth. When you love someone, you don't lie to them. And so part of with the real role of love in our movement, I believe, is being willing to tell the truth to people. Whether that's nice for them to hear, like you could say to someone, I love you, and they might feel good about that, and that's a good thing to say. And you could also say to them, hey, you're kind of creeping on all the women in the room, and I don't really think that's a good thing. That's a message of love. That's a message of love. You could say, hey, I noticed there's not many black people here. How did you create that? That's a message of love. It's not the cat, that's a message of love. It could be, hey, do you know we don't have national health care and that's why addicts can't get treated? And did you support the candidate who wanted national health care? That's a message of love. Like, love is not like pouring sugar on something. Love is telling the truth. And loving someone and believing in someone's value and worth enough that you're willing to tell them the truth as you see it. And that you're willing to hear the truth that they say. That you're willing to listen to when someone tells you, hey, what you're doing, I don't think that's the right thing. I think you are reifying some sort of oppression, or you're not doing what you could do to move us forward as humans. The species could use something different than what you're doing right now. And I think that sometimes, I love love. I love love a lot. But I think sometimes this call to love is used as a way to sort of try and, put some frosting on the divide in the cake. And that's not, to me, that's not love. Love is saying, hey, there's a crack in the cake. Do we need to bake a new one? Do we need to just accept the cake the way it is? It's tasty, let's just eat it. We don't have to pile frosting on. We can just love it the way it is. Because I like cake too. Not as much as I like love, but close. And so I think there's a way sometimes that we talk about love that is not the way I mean it. I mean love like from a place of real honesty and truth. And sharing on a human level, and I think that has a central role in the movement. It must, I think all social movements depend on that level of love. But I think some of those other kinds of love stop movements from getting to where they need to be.
I know when you guys watch the news, they would say that Black Lives Matter people are terrorists. But we're actually really one big family. Like, you step down there, we're like, what's up? Like, oh my gosh, you're here. I knew he was gonna be here. And I think we're a movement of love in general. Honestly, we're one huge family. We love everybody. There's not one person that's in the street that we do not love. We will do anything for you. One person gets touched by, like, even like blowing your finger at a cop, the cop points finger at you. We're like, wait. No. And today we were in the street feeding the homeless. And they're not going to show you that on the news. They want us to be a test group, but we love our people. This whole movement is because we love our people. We love our people. We want to keep our people alive. So therefore, we are going to fight for our people. And yeah. So that's about it. It's like we're just love in general. Like all of us are love. I don't care what nobody says. They talk about us on Twitter or whatever, but you will not meet not one protester that face won't light up when they see you. Or when you even come up to the street like, hey, I know you. You know me. How do you know me? You did such and such. Oh, yes, you did. We did. We just did it like, I know you. You know it? Yes. So that is love. Our movement is love. We promote love. And we say Black Lives Matter. And we love everybody. Even the cops. We love y'all. And when we say Black Lives, we meant all Black lives. It's not a small few. And we don't go out. I went to one movement. It wasn't a Black Lives Matter movement. But they was like, why are you here? You're not even Black. I said it to my boyfriend. I'm like, oh no. No. We're here for the same reason. I said, we're supposed to love each other. And if we're not here promoting love and peace and happiness, then they're looking at us like, look at these fools. They're not put together. There's clearly a divide. So in order to be on ground, you must love each other and look out for each other. So,
Yeah, so all of that, what role does love play in our movement? Everything. It is our motivation. It is the exception that makes us so unique. How many believe that love is an action? It's a verb, right? Love is a verb. And so, I'm gonna just tell you like this. I did not enjoy being tear gassed in Ferguson. Only love, only love for my people allowed me to do that, right? And for people who believe that we are anti-cop or anti-police, I'm anti-policing the institution, right? Not the person who gets up every day and is trying to feed their family. And so what I'm saying to you is that if this movement was created as a hate group, how many times have I been so close to an officer who has called me a nigger bitch, who, and sorry Jesus, called me a loud black girl, told me to shut up, has shoved me and pushed me, and I kept my hands to myself. Only love can do that. And in action, right, going back to this idea that love is a verb, and even going back to what I said before, that I grew up in a church where my granddad was the pastor and my dad was a pastor, and my granddad started the church because he wanted to save his family, and that was the only way that he could, like, in his mind, figure out a way to do it, was to start a church, right? Like, God saves people, so this must be the way. Love in action for me now is disruption. Because if I love you, then I have to stop what's happening to us.
That's right.
And sometimes that requires me putting my body on the line. Sometimes that requires me loving my wallet and loving you enough to open my wallet up and fund some of these grassroots organizations doing the work in our communities. Sometimes me loving you means I need to sit down with my racist ass uncle who sits at the table and says, blue lives matter, there are no blue lives, Smurfs aren't real, right? And so, how do we love in action? And I think that that is an everyday commitment. You have a partner that you love, you have a mom that you love, even though sometimes she gets on your nerves. You have a dad that you love, even sometimes he tells you what to do. It is a commitment to love that person every day. It's a commitment to be in struggle with that person every day. And that kind of commitment to liberation, which right now seems so far away, right? Like I think about that. This is literally David and Goliath. The idea that black people in America are fighting for this idea of freedom in a world that says, well, you're already free, right? And we have, my roommate is in Palestine right now, and she was detained for 8 hours because she's Ethiopian, right? And I sat here and I thought, I love black people, the diaspora. I love people so much that I know by putting my body on the line in St. Louis, Missouri, in the heart of this nation, that ripples around the entire entire world, right? Like, and I never, ever will have to go to Palestine for those people to know that I love them. Because right here, when we got tear gas, they tweeted us. In a world where they don't have running water, where they don't have constant food to eat, they figured out a way to say, hey y'all, this is how you protect yourselves from chemical warfare. That's love. When you live in oppression and you find time to say, I want to stand in solidarity with you, right? Like, that's love. That is sacrifice. And if you are, and I'm gonna tell y'all, because y'all are a room full of white people, there's a lot of white folks in here. Love looks like you sometimes shutting up and stepping back. Love looks like sometimes you understanding why we have a problem with Hillary Clinton. You may want to vote for her. You may want to vote for her. But you need to understand and love me enough to say, you know what, she has done some really crazy stuff. You're right. What can we do as the people who hold 90% of the wealth in this nation to leverage your demands against her? Like, you have to sometimes be an intermediary and to connect two sides. And being a bridge over troubled water, that's love, you know? And so I'm imploring you to say that love is really action. Sometimes it's listening, that's also a verb, but love looks really different when you're really saying Black Lives Matter. It's not, oh, I see you guys, let me honk my horn. It's let me pull over and get out the car and see what you need, right? It's let me go to the store and get some water and bring it back, right? And sometimes it is saying, I'm white, let me shut up. I'm a man, let me shut up. I'm straight or cis-presenting, let me shut up. I have money, let me shut up. Because if you listen to the words of those who are most oppressed, then we actually all can maybe be free.
Oh man, that's awesome. I love this. So before I go to the next question, I just want to say something about Black Lives Matter because it was brought up like terrorism and all that. And we know right now that there are sectors of our society trying to paint the movement in that way. So hopefully you all understand, especially from listening to people who helped reignite the movement 2 years ago, that that's ridiculous. And one of the things, I was co-chair of the Don't Shoot Coalition, and I talked a lot about is two goals. One is to change the relationship between Black and white people, because our country is definitely built on the dynamics of that relationship. But another thing that intersects with that, especially with Black people, but with white people as well, is the relationship between poor people and people with money. And that's what the Black Lives Matter really, in the larger context, is working to transform, because it's a transformative movement. And if you transform the relationship between Black and white people and people with money and poor people, you change everything. That was what Dr. King was trying to do when he was killed. He was speaking out against the war, and he was trying to change the relationship between poor people's campaign. He was trying to bring together poor Black people and poor white people. And that scares them more than anything, right? So that's what the movement's about. It's definitely not a terrorist group. If it is, it's the terror that we're bringing to the 1%. That's the terror. Okay, so last question. The Up to Us Caravan is bringing people together across movements with the message, it's up to us to write the narrative we want future generations to be born into. What does that mean? And I guess what do you all think? What do you all think it means? And what is the hard work of making that really happen? Let me ask this, is there a representative of the It's Up to Us Caravan? Okay. You know somebody's got it going on when I ask that, and everybody's like, yeah, this so-and-so. Okay, so what I would like to hear is, I ask, what does that mean? And if you expound on that a little bit.
Absolutely. Heidi has been waiting to give the speech to save the world. That's been our running joke. But no, I do want to say, we did a similar to our pies. Thank you so much for the late. Thank you for patience and giving us voices and hearts and everything. We did a similar tour in California, 5 days before the California primary, and Heidi was one of the organizers that hosted us at one of the events, and we had a cameraman there, and they asked you why you're doing what you're doing. And all of us were in tears, which you probably didn't see, as to why you're engaged. And so for me, you are to us probably even more than I am. So I'd like to give you this mic.
And she's been organizing all our local
Thank you so
events.
much. My name's Heidi. So we did talk about my deep desire to give this speech that saves the world, but I think that all of us, are using our voice. All of us are giving the speech to save the world, right? So you wanted to know more about FS? Is that your main question?
Well, I was asking you when you say it's up to us to write the narrative we want future generations to be born into. So the question for the panel, and I thought, maybe they don't know this part. What does that mean? You guys got to have some idea of what it means to hold. And then what is the hard work of making that really happen? So if we could address at least what does that mean?
Sure.
So we could have, and walk over this way a little bit.
Okay, I don't want to block anybody. So.
Yeah, I know, blocking is not standing.
Okay, I'll stand in front of the white guys if that's all right. So the little subtitle of Up to Us, I think, is really essential. So it's up to us, right? So it doesn't matter who becomes president, who the candidate is, although many of this and much of this was born out of the Sanders movement. So that's really he may be sort of the midwife to this movement, but he, gave birth to a lot of people that got involved that were never involved before. And so what we're really trying to do with this caravan and so many people across this nation and this world, it is really about keeping the movement moving. And it really is not up to him or her or anyone else, except it's up to us what happens next. And I really appreciated what you said about love being a verb. And that's exactly what this is about. That's what this caravan is about. That's what all the folks up here are talking about, and all the people in this room and in this world. Because love is so essential. And to me, and I've been thinking a lot about this on this trip, because love's a word that comes up a lot on this trip. And what I'm excited to see is what everybody on this caravan and in all these communities does with that love. What are you willing to do with that love? Who are you willing to stand up for and stand up with that love? And I'll just close by saying, for me, it is about the future generations, which is part of that question about the narrative. I come to this work out of a deep concern around our changing climate, which I see as, one of the urgent issues of our time that we have such a short amount of time to make effective and meaningful change on. So this is not a time to get frustrated and leave if your candidate doesn't get elected. This is a time to get frustrated and engaged. This is a time, have a moment, take a moment if you need to grieve, but take just a moment, and then the next day we need to be out there fighting for a better world, because we do not have time to feel sorry for ourselves. We do not have time to complain. We only have time to do the work and the heavy lifting of making a more fair and just and sustainable world for everybody. So, it's up to us.
So I don't know, the first part was what does that mean, which I think probably kind of answered. So what is the hard work of making that really happen?
Well, I would say to start with, when I read this question, ancient Chinese proverb came to mind. I don't know who wrote it or why they wrote it, but somebody once said, "A culture grows wise when old men plant seeds to trees they will never sit under the shade of." I I think that really applies to what we're doing here. We would all be fools to think that all of our issues that we're addressing and trying to come towards and pull out of people that don't seem like they're there, but there could always be a better way of doing the things that we're doing to live our lives. I think that a lot of us get discouraged after a year or 2 years or a lifetime of looking at, and I mean, I'm not that old, but I know people who have been working at this for so long to change just such minuscule little things. But in the grand scheme of things, that is a big thing. That is a ripple effect. Like what she was saying about us right here, laying your life right now for something you believe in, ripples across the world. It may not be today or tomorrow that you affect someone on the other side of the globe, but your impact on us as humanity, as us as a whole and a people, it's a continual thing. And I think that people a lot of times struggle with not seeing the immediate effects of what their actions are. It's important to keep your head up and keep going and keep fighting for what you believe in.
I think the hard work for me is a continuous changing of your paradigm. I believe fighting for equality in a system that is oppressive is a silly goal. I don't want to be treated equally in an oppressive system. I want the system to not be oppressive. I don't want to do whatever it takes to elect my candidate. I want my candidate to be elected because they didn't play the system. And I want the system to be broken by that. I think I have a theory that I trot out, that I think most progressive movements in this country have started from this paradigm. The system needs to be changed. Again, there's a word on this shirt I would use about what the system is if there weren't small children running around. So that's where we start in most progressive movements. I was very active in AIDS activism in the 90s, and that's what 80s and 90s, and that's where we started. We started with the system has got to change. It is totally messed up. And what happens is in those systems, eventually, as you're in a movement trying to fight against that system, a lot of times what happens is the system gets uncomfortable, so they give you a cookie. Our cookie in AIDS activism was the Ryan White Care Act. That when we started AIDS activism, we said our one demand is universal health care for all. We wanted to break the healthcare system because the healthcare system had broken us with the way that people living with HIV and AIDS were being treated by that system. And then Ryan White Care Act was enacted, which made sure people living with HIV had care. So we got added to the system. And then we said, okay, system's fine. Gay movement. Early gay liberationists said the system is messed up. All of it. It needs to be torn down. We need to get rid of marriage. We need to change family relationships. We need to be able to love freely all those people who we want to love. And then we got added to the system. We got marriage, and people sort of said, oh, so the system's fine. We can get married now. And we've seen it again and again. It happened in the labor movement. It happens in lots of movements. And what we need, if we're going to work cross movements, is a demand for liberation. We cannot get racial equality in systems that were built on racism. It's just no way to happen. The system has to come down. The system has to come down. So I'm sorry to disagree with our opening speaker, but we do need to bring it all down to the ground and rebuild it, because it's built on bloody ground. It's built on oppression. It's built on destroying people for who they are. We have to bring it all down and build from a place of liberation. Build from new places of being. So, to me, that's the hard work.
When I first saw this question, I thought about the children, of course. I think it is up to us to teach the value of life. Every time I turn on the news, I see a new little kid being killed. I see grown-ups being killed by little kids. It's sick to me. I think if we knew the value of life, we would stop taking so many lives. The hard work would be to convince somebody the value of somebody else's life. And this goes hand in hand with anything. Like, if you have an issue with somebody, your first reaction should not be to grab your gun. Your first reaction should probably just walk away. I'm sorry. Like, I'm not a confrontational person, and I will argue you down, but I'm just gonna walk away because I don't want any issues. So for me, it's plain and simple. It's up to us to bring back the value of life.
I'm really gonna try to be short. Like, I'm being so this has been a long day of me, like, engaging the state. And so these questions are really great, because I'm like, today is freedom now, right? And my brain has been working on that a lot. And so, what is the hard work of making that happen? Well, I remember, I'm an acronym, kind of like use words to teach a lesson person. So I made this tweet about a month ago, and I said, here's what I define ally as. A is for always centering the impacted, right? L is for learn and listen to those who are most oppressed. The Y is for yield the floor. I forgot my own tweet. So one L is for live and learn, listen and learn from those who are most impacted. The other L is to leverage your privilege, and the Y is to yield the floor. And I made that the night of the Orlando shooting, because there were a lot of straight people and a lot of white people who erased the fact that all of those people who got killed in that club were people of color, and who wanted to center a movement, a LGBTQ movement that had silenced the racial aspects of what it means, the intersections that are required in that space. And so I wanted to say, hey, this is what it actually means to be an ally. Like, yes, you are queer, but you are not a person of color, and there's a different type of play when a shooter walks over a black person and says, y'all have been through enough, I'm gonna let you live. I don't know what that feels like exactly, but I imagine that when I walk away alive, I don't know how to process a lot of these things. And so, movement, when I first saw that word, of course, I saw move, but then I saw two little letters form together, me, right? And so in order for a movement to actually happen, I gotta work on me. I have to deconstruct what our society has taught us. And here's the thing, in church, out of church, everywhere, America is fucked up, right? It does really messed up stuff to people everywhere else in the world. Then it does really jacked up stuff to people with melanin in its own country. And so all of the people who exist in power are lacking melanin, right? Except for the one in the White House right now, right? But according to the Republican National Convention, we don't need the next 4 years to look like the last 8 years. So they're pushing, right? They're pushing Donald Trump has he had a TV show. He he was one of the pillars of reality television. We are living in a moment where we've gotten so far away from our core values. And that is because we're not doing the work inside. Where we're accepting whatever people send us versus saying, what do I actually want? What do I actually believe in? And once you actually deconstruct racism right inside of you, and you do a daily job of saying, did I just show up poorly? Am I taking up too much space? Am I yielding the floor? Am I leveraging my privilege? and you do that as a man, and you do that as a cis person, and you do that as a Christian, because people get on my nerves acting like Christian privilege. Most of us, if you're American, you're perceived Christian. Atheists or not, you're perceived Christian. And so that privilege of saying, hey, yeah, you can go anywhere in the world because you're white and you can believe that there is nothing at all above us, but people look at you and see white American Christian, don't mess with them, right? And so I have a friend, Nabia, who's this amazing organizer, who's Muslim, a black woman, Muslim, went to Israel and got detained for 12 hours because her last name was Aziz. Like, we live in a world where America has sent out these terrible, terrible messages, and they enforce it. They fund the Israeli occupation, and Americans can't get in because we don't look like the white American Christian person. And so we have to do a really good job of deconstructing our own BS. Because I think 5 times cursing, I'm gonna have to go pray. But we need to do a really good job of that. And then what is the other hard work? The hard work is saying, okay, once I've checked my own stuff, am I checking the spaces that I occupy? Because I love the person who's like, I really believe that Black Lives Matter, but all your friends from All Lives Matter people, right? Or your mom, your mom is trolling me on Twitter and you know it, and you don't say anything to that person. And so I think that accountability starts here with us, and then it starts with each other. The campaign that we are building right now is not all about racism. It's not all about, like, there's always going to be something. Today is Black Lives Matter. Tomorrow is going to be immigration. The day after that is going to be environmental justice. The day after that is going to be colonialism and imperialism. For each of those things, there is one thing that we will need: us. And that is person-to-person contact. If we're not building a movement that is rooted in love and rooted in people, then we're gonna lose every time. And I am not in the business of getting knocked down. And so we have to do a much better job of understanding Hillary might take the White House. Donald Trump might take the White House. God forbid. God forbid. Like, just the whole thing is messed up. The whole thing. But if we're going to actually do something real here, it's going to start in the basements of churches. It's going to start at our kitchen tables. It's going to start in the classrooms we talk to. We're going to have to change the minds of people to actually have them move toward this idea of liberation. And trust me, y'all not free, even in your whiteness. So when I get free, your freedom is gonna look a lot better than what it does. And I can imagine, I don't know what white privilege feels like. It feels like y'all walk around like happy all the time and stuff. But I'm saying that, like, when I'm actually free, your life gets so much better. And I think we all want better lives, right? Like, I believe that we all want better lives. And so we have a responsibility to fight for the collective liberation of all people. And that starts with doing internal work and then organizing in such a way that media doesn't matter. Our children are growing up understanding Black Lives Matter. It's not something we have, it's not the sex talk, it's not the birds and the bees, it's the right and the wrong of the world. That you do not allow your child to grow up in a privileged, isolated space where they think every Black person is ghetto. I got this one story to tell Mike and I'm gonna be done. I went to Quick Trip. Quick Trip is a very unique space for me because Quick Trip is, so Mike Brown got killed August 9th. The Quick Trip in Ferguson burned on August 13th. No national media coverage came into the Quick Trip burn. That's when I realized that property was more important than Black people. So, but I like Quick Trip. I actually really do. You know, they do a really good job of appealing to the consumer that is Black people, right? And so I went there the other night and the guy says, hey, how are you doing? And I'm like, I'm fine, how are you? And he says to me, wow, you're not as ghetto as all the people that usually come in this store. It's like a white 19-year-old, that's y'all people. Yeah, I tweeted about it because I was hot. And so I was like, sir, what? And I was like, what did you just say? Like, that's really offensive. And he says, well, we don't have 2 security guards in here for no reason. So I'm sitting here and I'm like, man, it's so hot, my ice melting. Like, it's getting warm because you're pissing me off. And so then he says, so I'm trying to explain that what you perceive as ghetto, right, because you've been sheltered and you live out in the country and you travel to the city every day, what you perceive as ghetto does not equate violence. right? But he sat at his kitchen table probably for 18 years and his parents never said that to him. He sat in a classroom for years at a time and no teacher ever said that to him. So now we have 19 some odd years of deconstructing racism to a boy who doesn't think that he's racist. And that doesn't start with me. This is also what I have to say, and I will be done. White people. It ain't my job to teach you how to not be racist. It ain't my job to tell you that Black Lives Matter. It is your job to seek out the information. It is your job to challenge the institutions that have erased us. It is your job to teach the real history, right? It's my job to help Black people. It's your job to challenge this jacked up system in a real way that says, hey, Texas Instrument, stop only teaching these kids about Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks. There are a lot more Black people who are gonna want to go with them, right? And I think that it's going to take you actually saying, in action, how do I show up? What is love? And how do I achieve that? And do that in the way that you can be and stay in your lane. I got this, like I can take the streets. I might need you to show up, listen, yield the floor. I'm going to yield the floor.
I just want to piggyback off of Kayla when she said quick trip. That was my prejudice job I was telling y'all about. And when I walk in there, it's like, ask the Black girl. And I'm like, what the heck? They're like, so what are Squidorellos? What's up with the weave? And I bet you like Bernie. And I'm like, it's like, ask the Black girl. I think our issue we need to really address is when somebody says some effed up stuff like that, you should be like, well, what do you mean? And it was like, you sound really proud for a Black girl. So what do you mean? Definitely a quick trip. You know how many losses I had? So what do you mean I sound not ghetto? What do you mean my hair is really nice for a Black girl? So what are you trying to say? You thought he was okay because he got shot? Like, you mean to tell me it's all right that they can just shoot a person in the car from their child? And we need to start asking why and start challenging people. Because nobody likes to be challenged. When you start challenging them, you start breaking them down a little bit, and then it gives you time to teach them. Well, let me tell you what really happened, since you obviously don't get it.
Well,
That is crazy.
My new local campaign is to get Jake from Quick Trip.
Which one? Let me know.
oh, hey, wait a minute. We're almost there.
She
We're
can
almost-
transfer. I just want him to be transferred out to St. Charles. Just away from Black people. That's all I
Black
need
people
to know.
out there.
Okay, wait, please. All right, so I want to say that I feel like this was an incredible panel. I also wanted to say, I work for Veterans for Peace, and one of the things that we have talked quite a bit about and use as a lens for organizing, you always hear about wars at home, wars abroad, and we realize we need to be more proactive and have the answer for that. And the answer for that is peace at home, peace abroad.
Yes.
And the reason I want to bring that to you is because most of the time we get caught up in what's happening here at home and we forget about what's happening abroad, right? And the thing is, that's what the system wants. It wants us to divide. It always wants us to divide. That's constant, right? But it definitely wants us to think about foreign policy and domestic policy as if they're two different entities, when they're actually interwoven into each other. So please, as you organize, as you think about things, don't forget about the wars that happen abroad, how they impact us here, and that if we're going to have peace here, if we're going to have justice here, it has to also happen abroad. And it's been so bad what they're doing abroad is now here at home. The attacks are not just because somebody woke up and decided, I don't like Americans, I'm gonna go shoot them. That's not what happened, right? So we can't just listen to what they tell us, they just hate us for no reason. Or even if they hate us, that's not even what's going on. What are we doing 3,000, 4,000 miles away, So think about that, because it's impacting us right here. And when Palestinians can tweet us, that means they already know that. We're the ones that are ignorant. So we're going to have to educate ourselves and think about it in all the work that we do. So thank you very much to the panel. Thank you.